Welcome to the Global Education Station Presents. I'm Annette Levesque, your host, education and technology strategist, and author of eLearning Gold, the ultimate guide for leaders. In each episode, we explore innovative ideas and best practices in education, connecting with directors, CEOs, authors, and thought leaders. Together, we'll share stories and insights to inspire and engage learners globally. Today, I'm excited to introduce Andrew Barrett, the Director of R&D at Elearning, where they are using AI to shape the future of education. Andrew has a PhD in instructional systems technology and has led teams at TD Bank, Shopify, and Carleton University. Currently based in Ottawa, Canada, Andrew is a pioneer in ed technology. Welcome, Andrew.
I'm so excited to be here, Annette. Great to be with you.
And we're excited to hear all about your journey in EdTech and scale learning. And maybe we can start out with you telling us a little bit how you landed in educational technology and what your role is at Scale Learning.
Sure, I'm happy to jump in. So I had kind of a winding path to get to where I am now, and really started off more on the technology side. So had a background in computer science, worked in software development back when the internet bubble wasn't, we didn't know it was a bubble, but did some consulting work in that space. But I found that the work wasn't as fulfilling as I would like. And so I looked back in my past and really realized that there were certain experiences related to education that I really loved. And so that's when I kind of changed directions and pursued ultimately my PhD in instructional systems technology from Indiana University, and really dove into the EdTech space. And that landed me, after that, I came back to Ottawa, which is my hometown, and got a position at Carleton University, leading one of their learning and teaching services teams. And then I had various leadership positions at, like, as you said, first at Carleton, then at Shopify, then at TD Bank. And so that was really cutting my teeth on this wicked problem of leveraging technology to promote learning, especially among adult learners in both higher ed and corporate contexts. And then from there, it was really back when GPT-4 was launched back in the spring of 2023 that it was a watershed moment, and I just said, okay, this is very exciting. There's all sorts of challenges and opportunities that I see here, and so that's when my wife and I co-founded Scale Learning, and that we've been heads down on helping our clients with in the AI and L&D space, just trying to make the most of the opportunities and mitigate some of the challenges and risks associated with it.
And so, how can Scale Learning help educational organizations? What are some of the things that we can benefit from Scale Learning?
Yeah. So one of the things that we try to do is really work with our clients to really understand the problems that they have. I think, and that's one of the things I love about your book is really focusing in on what are the problems and not just jumping to, okay, we have this shiny new AI thing. How do we throw it at whatever problem? So I think really working with our clients to understand where they are and upskill them on just understanding what AI is all about, because it's a big domain. There's a lot of hype around it, but it's been around for a long time, and so just understanding the landscape of AI, how it's evolving, what are those kind of unique affordances when it comes to learning and development, and then looking for those opportunities to say, here's the important role that L&D can play. And I really think learning and development professionals have a key role to help their organizations make the most of AI, but then also make sure that you avoid some of the pitfalls, as people are going to have to possibly change how they're doing their work. Look for ways to integrate AI into their workflows. I think L&D is really at the heart of that. And they're going to need the help from people who are there to promote learning and help people make those changes and navigate some of the disruption that's coming.
And what do you see, Andrew, as some of the common mistakes or some of the common pitfalls of AI that you're describing that people are
Yeah,
making?
well, and again, I kind of go back, and this is something you brought up in your book, is like there's a common pitfall is that people get all excited about the technology, and it could be the shiny new LMS, it could be a learning experience platform, it could be some new authoring tool, or even like concepts like gamification or micro learning or all these things. And all of those things have a place and a place to play and problems that they can help solve. But I think a common mistake with those concepts or technologies, but then also with AI, is people just get so excited about it that they don't do the work to like understand their learners, to understand the problems that are being faced, and to really look for, okay, what's the problem that we need to solve, and then is AI the right tool to bring to bear here? And it might be, and I think it's one of a very few set of tools that could be very powerful, but doesn't mean that it's always used well. It can be used poorly. So I think a common mistake would just be like, okay, we have to do something in AI. We're going to launch it really broadly, and like we're going to start replacing a bunch of folks with AI, maybe prematurely. And in the L&D space, I think educators and people who are talented facilitators or coaches or all these roles, I think AI can play a role there, but I think you don't want to just jump right over to AI-driven solutions without factoring in the kind of the human element and things that, in some cases, even if the AI could talk to me the way my coach talks to me, I wouldn't want it to come from an AI. I want to have that human connection. And if you don't have that, even if it's saying all the right things, and in many cases it's not, it wouldn't be the same type of learning experience. And so I think navigating that and the nuances of it, I think that's challenging. And I think L&D professionals are uniquely positioned to help their organizations navigate that better. And that's what we try to help folks with, upskilling, and then also kind of helping them figure out, like, where are those places where we could leverage AI and learn from it.
I really like that, each organization, even if it's the same type, even if it's a K to 12 school, but in a different geographic location, or, we have
Yeah,
different populations with different technologies and different access and different needs, and really evaluating that first. And where can AI help us without losing our human centric approach? Because as I keep saying to everybody, the more automated we become, the more personal we also need to become as the technologies take care of the data-driven parts of education. I too don't want a coach that's an AI speaking to me. Like, you don't feel value coming from someone who's not an actual person. And students don't want to write assignments, whether you're K to 12 or university and college or an employee. You don't want to be submitting work to when another person's not actually reading it. Back to just AI. It's great to get some advanced feedback from it on maybe where did you go
exactly.
well and what are you
Yeah.
missing. But there just feels like there's something missing, and there's no value. You're not motivated to be writing for AI, as lovely as the bot may be.
Yeah, no, I think I think we're on the same page there, and I think like that idea of advanced feedback, I think that's a great use case for AI, where it's like there's no way you could do like just it would be too burdensome on an instructor or facilitator or something like that to be giving rounds and rounds of feedback on a particular assignment or something like that, or even if you had peer feedback. But I think the place where AI can really shine is in giving some feedback. Like you can provide it with a rubric for the assignment. You could give it examples of really good, strong artifacts that would get a really high grade, or some that wouldn't. And then it can automate the feedback in a way where then you can take that and improve what you're going to submit. It's not necessarily the only feedback that you get, but it deals with some of the challenges early on in a way that a human just wouldn't have the time to do. And I think that's a great use case for AI.
Do you have any feedback, Andrew, on what types of boundaries organizations should be developing, or guidelines, maybe is a better word, for their students and their learners on where, and how it's okay to use AI? I've talked to directors who are creating sort of the red light, green light, yellow light scenario of, hey, you can use AI for this. Make sure you cite that you've used it, but you cannot use it for this part of a task. And what have you seen in that when it comes to developing some guidelines and policies?
Yeah, I've seen a range, and some folks are just like, shut it down. We like don't use it at all, and just like there's no safe space for folks to experiment with AI. I think the difficulty there, whether it's in like higher education or in corporate context, people end up using it, but it's all under the kind of behind the scenes, and that can be dangerous, and you can't have these open conversations of how to deal with the risks. So I think citing, being very transparent. I think organizations that set set those boundaries for folks to say like, okay, yeah, use it in these circumstances, but in these circumstances we can't. And sometimes that has to deal with the data that they're using. They don't want to be putting either highly proprietary data or information into an AI that they don't necessarily, maybe they're not as confident on what's going to happen with that data. Or in other cases, it's either learner data that should remain private, or it could be customer data that you have to treat with the utmost respect. And so I think the organizations that are going to succeed make those boundaries, like are very intentional about the boundaries that they're setting, but then make sure that there are places where people can experiment. Because I'm a big fan of 𝗪𝗪𝘁. I'm sure anyone who's following AI, he's prolific on like every platform. But and I'd echo his idea that each organization needs to experiment, and they're the ones doing the research and development. And like my company can come in and help, but I think you have to have that learning culture and like company culture of experimentation, of sharing, not just having things happen behind the scenes, because that's the way that you're going to learn from each other and actually figure out. And it's an amazing, like I'm super excited about this wicked problem of like, how do you integrate AI into workflows? But it's certainly not a trivial problem. And AI is getting better all the time, and things might not work with one model with some context, but might work with another. So it's like, I think we're going to be like working through this over time, and the organizations that have set up those structures to help their employees succeed in a transparent way are going to be ahead.
Hmm. Yes, and the fact is, I mean, even if as an organization we say no, we don't want
Yeah,
it, or as an educational institution, the reality is that for a long time now, even predating AI, students in edtech programs in college and universities have been training on systems or for systems that won't exist when they
right.
graduate, and there's going
Yeah,
to be an expectation that they're able to use AI in the workforce and in the role of their job, and so we have
yeah,
to find a way to balance, the idea if educators aren't experimenting with it themselves. And I mean, they have a lot of barriers to that, from time to training time not being available. And they've got really busy days. But if they're not finding ways to play a little bit and get into it and incorporate it into what they're teaching, then students will be going along without them. But also there's going to be an expectation for students to be able to have a competency and a literacy in using AI transparently, as you said, when they graduate.
yeah. I completely agree. And it's like if you ban calculators or even word processing or something like that. You could imagine folks graduating if they don't know how to use AI effectively, and also navigate some of these nuances about, okay, well, when should I say that I'm using it? When should I when is it okay to just like use an image that has been generated by AI? They're going to be at a disadvantage because people in the workforce, some companies are embracing it pretty fully. And then you can't just go from not using it at all to using it effectively. You need to be building those skills. And so this is where, like, I'm not at Carleton University anymore, but I think there's an overlap with ideas of like plagiarism and citing and these sorts of things. And that was actually a focus of my dissertation, is how do you assess whether someone can recognize and avoid plagiarism? And what we found is people were actually cheating on that test, which was kind of ironic. But people just don't know how to do that automatically. They need to build up those skills, and so I think that's where higher ed and needs to do a lot of work to like build those skills up on how they can use AI effectively, and then model that in the classrooms. A big piece, I think, is different types of assessment that you can do, where it's like, okay, very clear, like, you can do this, please do use AI, but you have to explain how you used it. You have to maybe you're submitting a draft where you're the one doing fact checking on the AI and be like, oh, it said this crazy thing here, and I know that doesn't match up, or it made up this citation that, like. So I think building that into it is really important, and then ultimately having maybe it's a final assessment or something like that, where AI is not part of the toolbox that they're using at that point. And they've been building the skills both with using AI and mastering the learning objectives of the course or learning experience throughout. But then they have that kind of final marker where if they've just been relying on AI the whole time, that they know that's not going to get them through the final exam.
Exactly. And I think we've been moving from a place for a long time with technology. It used to be we spent a lot of time, heaven help me for saying this, but in the libraries and databases and researching for books for information. We don't need to be able to do that anymore. That's not a skill set that's no longer required. We have an overabundance of information. So now we've shifted to that skill set of, can you validate the information, as you said, perhaps in an AI task? And can you take all of the information that's out there, extrapolate what's true and factual, and turn it into new knowledge that we
Exactly.
can count on? That's going to be a skill set for the future.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's a danger if people don't get to that kind of, like in Bloom's taxonomy, how can you synthesize and evaluate? Like, if they don't get to that level, a lot of folks will be able to just like use a chatbot and like or use an AI chatbot and then paste the information somewhere else. And so you have to kind of, both as an individual and as a team, you need to be adding value beyond what an AI can do. Because if you're not, others will be able to do it, and then eventually AI can do it as well. So we need to find ways of adding that value and creating new knowledge and synthesizing things in a way that is unique and that the AI couldn't do it themselves or itself.
Exactly. Can you
Yeah.
give me an example, Andrew, of maybe a fun project you've worked on this year where you've helped an education organization that were in this process of integrating AI into their systems, and what you did, what the result was?
Yeah. So I've done a number of workshops with different types of organizations, and the one I'm really excited about is one of the big tech companies, and they actually make they're one of the folks that are actually creating AI, and so it was really cool to jump in with their L&D folks and just really understand what are the opportunities and challenges that they're facing, because the same way that I think everybody else is trying to figure out how do we leverage these tools to promote learning and development, or even just understand those tools, like how do we learn about AI, and let alone how can we leverage AI up to promote learning, just seeing where everybody's at, and then doing some like kind of more foundational work on just like, what is AI? What's the context of it? Like, how do you put like, everybody's heard about generative AI, but where does that fit in kind of the broader, like, large language models or neural networks, like all these different things? How do you kind of place it in there and understand it in that broader frame? And then it's, what are those opportunities that exist out there? And I think one of the interesting things is, and I think it's every company, not just the ones that I've worked with, they'll have access to some things within their organization, but not other things. And so this company had access to a lot of like cutting edge stuff, but they wouldn't be able to access like a competitor's versions of these things. And so in many cases, they wouldn't have had much experience in bumping it into using those. So even just to see what the landscape looks like, and it's evolving all the time, that has a lot of value as well, because it's really hard to keep up on this stuff. It slowed down a little bit in the last couple of weeks, but I think there was a time when it was like every week there was some mind-blowing release that some company was doing, and it's like, okay, I guess we can like create movies now with AI, or popular songs. And so just keeping up and then understanding the landscape, I think that's challenging, and that's where we can come in and like get people up to a certain level pretty quickly. And then you move on to the next step, which is more strategic. And it's thinking about like, okay, given what we know now, given the landscape, where are the opportunities that our organization has to meet the needs of our stakeholders? And how do we think about that in a strategic way, where maybe we need to partner with somebody else who can do this other thing really well, but our competitive advantage is this space. Maybe it's like the secret sauce of the organization, or we're really good at whether it's facilitation or coaching or building community within an organization. And there's some things that AI may be able to like disrupt sooner, but there's other things where, and I think we talked about it earlier, where AI may never, even if it gets better and better and better, it may never be able to replace the types of human connections that we need, just because we're humans and we want to have those human connections, and that's really important for our learning. And so helping organizations like understand the landscape, and then like narrow in on like, where do we focus our efforts in the future given some of the disruption that's happening? Those are the types of projects that I get really excited about.
And what would you say when you talk about perhaps having different companies in between to help an organization navigate it? At Scale Learning, what would be your biggest strength that you bring to that puzzle?
Yeah, I think our biggest strength is we have the grounding in the technology side, but then also the education side. And so this is where, and back to your book, I think like there are these things that still remain true with AI or whatever the next thing is. And it's really about how do you design learning experiences? What's the process that you go through? How do you solve these problems? But I find often, whether it's an ed tech company or a consultant, they might have a strength in one area, but not in the other area. But I think that's an area where scale learning has this kind of unique blend of experiences, both on the technology side from my software development days and working at like companies like Shopify that are very tech oriented, but then also has the grounding in like educational research, working in higher ed, seeing okay, what does success look like there? What does good teaching and learning really look like? And having that theoretical, but also the practical experience that we can bring to bear. Because sometimes having just the academic side, trying to apply that in a real world context, that can be challenging. But if you've had that experience and you know where some of the pitfalls are, you can help organizations avoid it.
I love that. And I honestly, in our world, I feel like when you can find someone who's had a foot in both worlds, education and technology, that's a unicorn. We're like unicorns because, and I do write about it, that one of the common challenges when I visit organizations that they're having is that educators have one lens when it comes to technology, but they also don't know what they don't know. They
Yeah,
don't always know what questions to ask to discover what's important about the technology and what can it do for them. And that's why when I in the book I didn't focus so much on a specific technology as
yeah,
what do you need and what do you need the technology to do for you, because technology is changing so rapidly you can't possibly these days write a book. And that was one of the questions I had. Why didn't you write about exactly how to use AI in the book? Instead, I focused on what benefits and what do we need the technology to do for us. And when you have someone that has an education lens and a technology lens, that's like a lovely little unicorn, because tech people are also not educators and they're not always the end users of the products, and they think that they know what we need when we're in the classroom, but if you haven't had that experience, you can't apply that lens to the end product. So when someone's got both, that's just magical when you're helping out an organization.
yeah. No, it's really exciting, and sometimes though it's challenging though too, because oftentimes um, organizations will get very excited about whether it's a certain educational technology or even an educational concept, and it's kind of this it's like the Gartner hype cycle, where you can get to this peak of overinflated expectations, and then you implement it, and even if everything goes very smoothly, it just never lives up to some of the hype around it. And so trying to manage that and trying to like, it's hard work getting to know the learners and having a real like grounded expectation on what are achievable goals with the technology. And it's rarely is it as transformational as maybe some of the vendors would have you believe, because they're trying to make a sale, and there's great vendors out there, but it's just their job is to get the sale and help you implement it. But unless you've actually been at an organization and kind of not just launched something but seen how it's implemented, whether it's a technology or a program, the real like there's challenges all along the way, but a real big challenge is just that ongoing sustainability of the initiative. Or okay, how do you maintain the learning experience as things change over time? And that's just it's like it's not as exciting as launching amazing new things, but that discipline, that kind of operational excellence, and having goals that you're really and KPIs that you're focused on, that are less about the technology and more about the learning of your employees and the performance of your employees, which is like it's not as sexy, but it's like that's where you want to get to. You don't want to just keep chasing the next shiny thing without actually improving either your students or your employees' ability to do certain things.
And I think assessing, as you said, like assessing the state of readiness of an organization, a technology can be fabulous and it can do fabulous things.
Yeah.
But if employees or educators, teachers don't have time or don't have access to appropriate training or exactly what they need to get on board with that, I've had scenarios where I've unfortunately witnessed boards, making large purchases with lots of zeros on the end of it for fabulous technologies, and then not having the cooperation of another part of the board to provide training or not being able to make training available, and then they end up with just a handful of people actually using it once it's implemented into their system. You're nodding, you know this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And this is where having the experience, but then also having some of the academic background, I think is really helpful, because there's a book, Everett Rogers's Diffusion of Innovations, and it talks all about this. And it's there's going to be those folks that are innovators and early adopters and these sorts of things, and that's one side of the spectrum. But there's folks that are, man, they're going to be the last ones to actually use this technology. And there's things you can do to increase adoption, and so it's but it takes time, and it's not just like just buying the tech and throwing it out there or kicking off the learning initiative. That's not enough. You need, and this was really driven home to me, and I think we went through the procurement and deployment of a new learning management system at Carleton University, and that was kind of one of my team's first projects. And we had excellent communications folks that were not just on the team, but the university-wide communications, and they knew that, okay, you need this drumbeat, you need it all the way through. You need to like have early adopters that are people that the laggards will look to and be like, okay, I really respect this person. The fact that they're up there saying this thing, that it's a practical thing that they're achieving with this system, that goes so much further than me going up. So somebody from a department that they don't know going up and saying the same thing. So it kind of goes back to the human side of these things, where you need to invest in not just the technology, but all the efforts, communication, adoption, community building, learning culture. How do you move those forward? Because if you don't, then it's very likely it's just going to sputter, and you're not going to get the value that you would hope out of whatever it is that you're deploying.
Andrew, just shifting gears a little bit,
Yeah.
what emerging technologies are you yourself feeling excited about for education that are coming around? What can you share with us?
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to the AI side, but to get maybe a little bit more specific, I think a really solid example is OpenAI's ChatGPT, but it's the GPTs. And so it lets you essentially create like a custom AI interface that allows you to kind of work towards some goal. And so where the real opportunity I see with learning and development, and it kind of goes back to what we were saying about maybe early feedback or something like that. So you could create a GPT as an educator where specifically related to one of the learning outcomes that you have in your course or your learning experience. And the goal of it could be not to say give the answer, but to say, okay, I want the learning outcome is to maybe it's producing some text, or maybe it's even classifying examples as one of some number of concepts or something like that. But you could, and it doesn't take that much, but you could provide all that context to the GPT. You could work with it to get it better and better, so that it's actually giving you feedback. You could also essentially train it. And this is not like, you don't have to be a coder or anything like this, but you could get it to the point where it's giving better and better feedback to kind of nudge the learner in the right direction on these things. And so I think that's really exciting, because this is a piece, like the whole idea of formative assessment and formative feedback. I think that's often a big piece that's missing in corporate and even higher ed learning experiences. And I think that's a place where AI can play a role, that, like, it would be great if we had people all the time that I could just send something and it would give me feedback instantaneously. But that's it's not scalable. But something like this is scalable, and it's not going to be right 100% of the time, but it's going to get you, it can help you get further and further as a learner. And so that when you do submit something or you do go to take the test, you've actually gotten a lot further. So, and it's not really it's not an Edtech tool. And I think maybe that's a thread that I think we're going to see where educators are using these tools that are not specifically for learning, but we're figuring out ways to leverage it for learning and development experiences. And so that's one space. I think another space maybe you'd be interested in talking about is the whole knowledge management space, because I think that's very exciting. And I think AI has a big role to play there as well.
That's interesting and fabulous. And I love using ChatGPT and the new version, the 4.0,
Yeah.
for creating fabulous new activities, even when it comes to workshops and seminars. I mean, I
Yeah.
thought I was creative, but it really can nudge your creativity brainstorming with it. And I think it's a little bit of a game changer.
I, I totally agree. And I think this is writing doesn't just come naturally to me, but if I can start writing and it gives me feedback, or I can be like, okay, what are 10 ways that I could start this paragraph related to this, or let me brainstorm 20 different ideas on a funny name for this article or something like that. I think those are great examples where even if it's wrong, it doesn't matter. That's not the point. It's more around the brainstorming and just being creative and having somebody that can quickly, or having this thing that's going to quickly give you some ideas that maybe you wouldn't have thought of, or it would have taken a really long time.
Or quickly move you forward when you get stuck. I mean,
Yeah.
I was like, thank you so much, AI, for coming out after I finished my book of 5 years that I worked on. And when you had those moments where you're staring at a blank screen and you know what you need to write about, but trying to, you're stuck on a particular phrase or thinking something doesn't sound just quite right, and having a tool that can brainstorm 10 different ways to present something that sparks and ignites your thought process going through it.
Yeah.
So that's going to be very exciting for writing moving forward, to be able to have that brainstorming tool and that sort of chat companion, if you will, to
Yeah.
provide some suggestions and insights.
I think you're right. Although I think maybe it'll actually work out better for you, the fact that you have the book out before all of this became available, because then it's a badge of nope, like people know that this was something that you put your blood, sweat, and tears into, and it wasn't something that you just had to lean on a AI to help with. So maybe the timing will work out really well.
It's true. And that's so true, because there's a lot of things I learned in that process that, were not, that I developed a skill set
Right.
during that process. Even though you've already got the master's in education, you can write clearly, but putting together a book for a completely different audience, that's not just an academic journal, but something that's going to be a usable tool for education leaders, that's a completely different journey and ball game.
Yeah.
And I think that also raises kind of the topic of, it's really important, even though we have the tool and we mentioned the calculator, I've discussed this before, it's still important to know how to be able to conduct an equation and add up math yourself if the tool is not available. So, when we're looking at younger learners and younger grades and we're assessing whether or not we should be using AI in different scenarios, we want to make sure that people still have the opportunity to develop some core competencies and apply that knowledge when they're using the tools.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's going to be an interesting thing to watch, where AI might be able to solve a certain problem that we want solved, but then I think we're going to increasingly realize that there's pieces of solving that problem that we value that aren't happening anymore. And so, an example, a friend of ours is a family doctor, and so great, you can have AI maybe take notes, listen to the conversation and take notes. But I think the work of taking notes and it forces your brain to do things that it's not going to be doing if you just know that the AI is doing it, or if you get AI to help, or you're using a calculator or something like that. You're not going to be doing the work that it might be necessary to do that work to get to some higher level, and I think that's going to be a challenge as people aren't doing that work, and so maybe they almost get blocked, where they can never get to a higher level of performance in a given domain because they're not getting the reps in on whether it's writing or coding or delivering feedback or whatever it is. Like if they're just using the AI all the time, they might just stagnate in a way, and so we might have this pipeline might dry up for the higher skill folks. There's a great book. I think the author's last name is Bean, but I'm excited to read about where he's specifically concerned about that impact of AI, where it could really hurt our talent pipeline.
I like that. Hurt our talent pipeline.
Yeah,
On our wrap up question. So, what we've been doing, kind of a fun thing with the
yeah,
podcast, that we ask a previous guest to leave a question for the future guest, not knowing who they are or what they do, just knowing that they have a role in education and a little bit in
mm,
the ed tech space.
yeah.
So, your question comes from Susie Lee Fernandez.
Okay.
She is the Director of Professional Learning and Engagement at the Ontario Principals Council. And I just want to preface her question, actually. It's a good question. But what brings to mind for me is the scenario. We haven't discussed this yet, but earlier in the year, if you recall, when Google Gemini's AI system faced a huge backlash over that controversial historical handling of historical images, where they presented images related to the Holocaust with people of color, and it was highlighted as a fundamental flaw in
Yeah.
AI. And this is what came to mind when I read Susie's question. So I'm
Mm.
interested on your take on it. So her question is, with growing emphasis on human rights and anti-oppression, what's your vision for the future of education? And I myself would add, as it impacts the development of new educational technologies.
Yeah. Well, so I think there's the opportunity for EdTech to help people understand the context of what's happened with oppression, and um, we've we've been dealing for a long time with these challenges, and so I think there's an opportunity to help people um, build empathy for others, uh, be able to just even understand the historical context. Like there's it's kind of shocking that in many cases that people don't have the context of what's been happening in the world back not that long ago. And so I think EdTech can play a role in helping people uh, build that empathy, understand these things in a way that would maybe take longer to do in the past. Even things like, and I'm not a huge proponent of VR, but I think there are use cases where it can be very valuable, and I think one of those is like you can literally be in the shoes of someone else, very different from yourself, and try and see a situation that you wouldn't see otherwise. And so I think there's real opportunities there. I think the other piece is like making sure that education is still able to deal with challenging ideas and concepts, and have open conversations about things that are difficult. And I think that's how um, we progress, is if we can have those conversations, even if we don't agree, listen respectfully and communicate respectfully, without it getting very polarized. And I think that's you see so much polarization. So I'm hoping the pendulum swings the other way, and we can practice. Like it gets back to like doing the reps, and you don't get good at using AI ethically if you don't ever practice AI. And I think it's the same way you don't get good at um, effective and respectful conversation if you don't practice and have the opportunity to kind of screw it up sometimes, and not have it be kind of the end of your your student life where you lose your job or something like that, within reason. But I think practicing some of those difficult skills is going to be really important, and I think technology can play a role there, where maybe you practice with AI in a very low stakes anonymous environment. So
Mhm. I think it also goes back to what you were saying about the role of humans with technology. I mean, for a long time now, we've known that one size does not fit all when it comes to technology or anything else. And I think about, some of the benefits when they created School in a Box, where the idea was that in developing areas, we could deliver curriculum and content, a baseline of, whether it be science or math, of curriculum and content that was designed to get an area or a school started if they didn't have access to resources and access to those things. But then it
yeah,
was up to the instructor to ensure that culturally sensitive content was applied and that it was applicable to the area and
Yeah.
to the needs of those people. And I think it's going to be the same thing with these technologies, that also the technology companies really need to be open to hearing that and making sure that there's diversity in imagery, that
Yeah.
that we see people with disabilities in leadership roles, that
Yeah.
we see women in leadership roles in the content development, and what needs to happen there. We can't perceive. I'm Canadian, living in Canada as well, and
Yeah.
I can't possibly imagine the experience of a learner living in South Africa or a
Oh,
learner living
exactly.
in Malaysia and the things that they deal with. So we need to be open to receiving that feedback, but it's never going to be a case of one size fits all.
No, no, and I think there's a real danger of that happening, especially with some companies. They could just be very dominant. Like there's just a handful of companies that are building some of these tools, and AI technologies being a key one of them. And so, how do you make sure underrepresented voices have a voice in those spaces? I think is really important. There's a great book, and I'm forgetting the author's name, but it's called Unmasking AI, and I thought that was eye opening for me. Really, and the author's talking about uh, some AI is trained on faces that look a lot more like mine than faces that look like hers, and then that has a ripple effect. And so how do we make sure that we're thinking about those things and mitigating those problems um, from the outset? And I think that gets back to a lot of the ethical use of AI piece that will be really important to navigate well in the future. So
Absolutely. Wrapping up today,
yeah.
Andrew, what have I not asked you that you want to make sure people know about,
Hmm.
or that you think is important as we're heading into a new academic school year?
Yeah, I think both for and I think we talked a little bit about it, but I think it's going to be very important for whether it's faculty or teachers or corporate L&D professionals to really think about where their competitive advantage is when it comes to learning and development, and then lean in hard on that, and then look for ways to um, leverage other resources or partners or other opportunities out there for meeting needs that where it's not your competitive advantage. And so there was a great project when I was at Carleton. It was all about open educational resources. And so when there's content that is general, widely accepted, and it's not, say, my competitive advantage, why not use that rather than like creating yet like probably the millionth PowerPoint on I don't know, the feedback sandwich or something like that. And so I think leveraging existing content, and then really thinking about where am I adding the most value here, and really refining that, I think will be really important, especially as AI gets better and better, and it will be very easy to create certain things very quickly, but you need to be able to help your learners in a way that AI really can't, and getting really explicit about that, I think will be serve folks well.
I would really agree with that. I think technology is moving way too fast for us to be continually reinventing the wheel. And when
Right.
people ask me what's the most expensive thing you can do in e-learning, I tell them reinventing the wheel all the
Yeah.
time and not leveraging, people who do what you don't do well, creating
Right.
teams
Yeah.
that can complement your existing strengths and skill sets. So I really like that,
Yeah.
assessing our competitive advantages and going
Yeah.
into the year.
Yeah. And
So
I think kind of tied to that is finding people that are also looking to level up in that area, and building that community of. So if you're in a particular domain and you have a certain skill set, find others. Like, you're probably unique in your organization with that. Whether it's you're the grade 9 math teacher who introduces folks to really complex concepts, there might not be anybody in your uh, that school who's at the same level and can really push you to get better. And I think finding that broader community to connect with, and really figure out ways to level up. I think that's really important for folks in all sorts of different types of organizations.
absolutely. So, as we wrap up, where can organizations find you, Andrew, if they want to contact Scale Learning?
Yeah, well, we're on the web at scalelearning.com. It's all one word, no dashes or anything like that. And then we're on, I guess, X or Twitter, and it's at Scale Learning. So that would be another spot. And if folks want to email me directly, they can reach me at andrew.barrett@scalelearning.com. I'm going to be happy to chat. I'm always interested in the challenges and opportunities people are looking at, and excited to collaborate with folks on doing really interesting work.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Your insights have been incredibly valuable. I love hearing news perspectives from other educators in different spaces. And you're actually my first ed tech
Oh,
person, so that
cool.
was really fun for me personally, actually, because I do love the bright, shiny new objects of technology. And so it was great to get some different insights. And I really appreciate you sharing your expertise with us today.
Yeah, well, I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to talk with you, and I'm very grateful for your book. I don't know if you can see it. It actually comes out very gold on my e-reader, and so it really emphasized the gold portion of e-learning gold. And I'm grateful for the book, and just it was so wonderful to talk with you. And I hope we can chat again in the future.
Awesome. Thank you so much.